Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome yet again to another episode of Dinner Guide. My name is Chef Andy, your regular host, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make one of the many dishes we're going to be covering of this segment of Around the World in 5 continents, and we're going to be making a very simple lamington. So very simply, we're going to start off as usual by introducing the ingredients and then slide into the main arena where we're going to prepare this very simple dish. But before we proceed, I'll proceed by introducing the ingredients before us. And from the very front, I've got about a quarter cup of butter there, and I've also got a tablespoon of butter just reserved on the side. We've also got some baking powder, and some cocoa powder there. We're also going to be using 2 medium-sized eggs, a bit of salt, and some cinnamon sugar, some icing sugar. We're also going to be using some regular sugar and some all-purpose flour. I'm also going to use a bit of some chocolate vermicelli and milk as well. So we're going to be using 2 half cups of milk, so be sure to separate the 2 of those. You also need some parchment paper, and last but not least, a nice beautiful container that has a bit of aluminium foil, which you're going to be baking your lamingtons in. So before we jump into the process of preparing this very simple dish, we are going to take a break really quickly. And when we do come back, you are going to all be able to see how this very simple dish is assembled and put together. So please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who just missed out on the introduction, I was just introducing the name of the dish for today, which is a lamington, a very simple pastry dish that you're going to be able to see on this very show. But before I proceed, some very key particular areas to check on. Always make sure to begin by reheating your oven at this stage. Remember, you are going to be making a cake which is going to go into the oven, so very important that you actually allow your oven quite a bit of time to heat up. Next up, we're going to start by combining some of the ingredients we'll be working with today. So very simply, I'll start with my dry ingredients. So we're going to add into that sieve of ours a whole cup of flour. To that, I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And all you're going to do is proceed to sieve that. Of course, making sure to remove any particular foreign bodies or lumps that may be left over in your sieve. You can discard whatever's remaining, and you can actually now set this aside, and this is actually going to combine a little later with some of the other ingredients. Now next up, you're going to start by preparing your wet ingredients as well. So very firstly, begin by melting about a quarter cup of butter. So I'm going to throw this in the microwave really quickly. And just set that for anywhere between 10 and 15 seconds. It should actually give it enough time to heat up. And while that melts, we're going to proceed to add some of these other ingredients to our bowl. So I'm going to start off by adding some eggs. Proceed to grab your butter, and just always very importantly, always spare some time to actually prepare all your ingredients. So very importantly, be sure to actually weigh out your ingredients before you start, and be sure to have all your apparatus or equipment right next to you before you proceed. So just to mention, I will actually be using a plastic whipping device for this, a whisk. And I'm actually going to also have a metallic one. The reason for this is one will particularly help me in really getting the eggs whooped, and the other one will actually help me in getting the whole cake mixture done. So very simply, start by whipping your eggs, making sure to get them nice and creamy. Once that's achieved, proceed to add your butter, while of course whipping as you go. Next up, add your sugar. Be sure to add everything that's left off in your container there. Be sure not to waste any of your ingredients. Now proceed to whip that together. Next up, start to add your flour in small amounts, while of course mixing through with your whisk. Of course, be sure to also add your flour in quarters. This will actually allow for the flour to really incorporate very, very well. Proceed to add your flour, mixing little by little until almost all your flour is incorporated. Also very crucial, remember to always scrape off whatever's left off on the sides. Right, now proceed to add your half cup of milk. Proceed to mix that through once more. And now finish off by adding the rest of your flour. And proceed to mix that through until you've got a nice, beautiful, consistent cake mixture. Right, so once that's nicely mixed through, be sure to go around, of course, trying to get everything off the sides, especially those little specks of flour, that little bit of cake mix that's sitting on the side. Be sure to just scrape those down into the center of the bowl with your whisk. And you can now simply proceed to add your mixture into your baking dish. And particularly for this, I decided to work with aluminium foil because it will actually save me quite a bit of time, especially in really helping the cake to cook a little faster than it should. So very simply to that, we're going to line that with a bit of grease. So I'm just going to use a bit of some serviette or some kitchen paper and just wipe some of that excess butter that's on the spoon there. And you can now discard the spoon, making sure not to waste any of your butter, and just proceed to line the inside of your baking tin. Right, so once that's done, discard your kitchen towel, and all you need to do now is pour your mixture into your baking dish. Of course, always holding your bowl really stable, making sure it's very stable while you do so. And then proceed to scrape off the rest of the remainder of your mixture into the baking dish that you're going to be using. And be sure also to take your time to completely scrape everything off from the sides. And this is now ready to go into the oven. So we're just going to slide that into a hot oven. Remember, the temperature should be set at anywhere between 180 to 200 degrees centigrade. And you should actually be using the top and bottom element, of course, if you're not already using a conventional oven. And we're just going to set our timer for anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes. Of course, making sure to start checking on the cake anywhere between the 14th and the 15th minute, just before it's ready to come out. So we're going to very simply slide that into the oven, slide it all the way to the back, and just shut that closed. Allow that to proceed to cook, and you can actually now take some time and get on to the next step, which is basically making your icing. So very simply, I'm just going to grab another bowl. Right, simple as that. Now next up, we're going to proceed to make our icing, or rather just the coating that we're going to be using on the Lamingtons. And for that, you will actually need some icing sugar, a bit of milk, some vermicelli noodles there, some butter of course, and last but not least, some cocoa powder and some salt. So start by adding some of your ingredients into the bowl, your sugar or your dry ingredients being the first. So start with your icing sugar. Next up, add your cocoa powder. Add also a small pinch of salt. And now all you need to do is proceed to reheat some of the other ingredients remaining, which would actually be your butter. Remember, you can't really whoop cold butter. So you will actually begin by melting that first in the oven, in the microwave oven, sorry. Set that for anywhere between 10 and 20 seconds. It should melt really quickly. Next up, we will actually also temper a bit of milk. So you will actually need a small pot for that. Now all you need to do at this stage is add your milk to your pan and proceed to heat your milk. Right, so reserve your warm butter just for a few seconds to just allow it to cool off. And the next and final process is basically now combining everything together, and it's a very, very simple technique. But very importantly, always have a rag right under your glass bowl. Remember, it might actually not be very, very easy to pour something into a glass bowl or a container that's sliding all over your counter. So this is a particularly good technique to actually help you to keep your bowl right on the countertop. So very simply, just run it through the tap, rinse it with a bit of some cold water and wring the water out completely. And you can actually use that to secure your bowl onto the table while you're whipping. So we're going to give just a few seconds until the milk just starts to show some bubbles on the side, which it already has. We're going to lower the temperature. Next up, we're going to add our butter into the icing and cocoa powder mixture and proceed to whip that together. And now you can turn down your heat completely and proceed to add your milk very, very slowly, something we normally call in a string format. So very, very thin line as you continue to whip everything else. Be sure to scrape the sides really quickly. And just as soon as you've got something that resembles almost a cocoa powder, hot chocolate kind of mixture, proceed to add everything else back into your pot. And proceed to heat that up once again. Of of course giving it just a bit of time to thicken, and that should actually be able to cool off right after that, and it should actually also be able to coat your lamingtons once those are done. But we are going to jump into a short commercial break now and just get our station organized. And when we do come back, I will be able to show you what the lamingtons look like, and we'll go to the last and final process where we're actually going to coat them with a bit of some cocoa icing and with a bit of some chocolate vermicelli. So please stay tuned and don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are with us just before the break, remember we had actually put a cake in the oven for about 20 minutes now, and it's still in the oven, it's not done. But we do have one that we made a little earlier in the show, which we're actually just going to use as a demo for the last and final product. So this is very, very simple, and it's the last and final technique of finishing your lamingtons. So proceed by moving your cake onto a board, and very, very importantly, start by taking off the crusts and turn your cake 90 degrees and proceed to do the same thing. And just simply all you need to do now is just cut this into some nice beautiful blocks of about 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches in diameter. Proceed to do the same, and for about a 1/2 kilo mixture of cake you should actually be able to get 12 exact pieces. And now all we're going to do is finish this off very, very simply. Up next, you'll proceed to grab the icing mixture that you had actually made earlier with a bit of the cocoa powder, a bit of the butter and the icing sugar, and using a very, very simple device, which is a fork, you're going to begin to dip your lamingtons in the liquid, of course tossing them a few times before taking them out and setting them on your wire rack to actually drain the excess fluid, and proceed to do the same for the rest of your pieces. Of course, taking quite a bit of time to make sure that this doesn't sit too long inside the mixture, not too short over time. And proceed to do the same thing until you get to the very last piece. One particular good tip I could share with you all, using the same wire rack that you actually have in your oven does actually allow you to do so much more when you're cooking. So you can actually use it for very, very many other reasons such as this. And you can actually also be able to just put a cake right on top of your wire rack, and you can actually pour your ganache or whatever icing that will go on top of it. And it will actually always save you quite a bit of stress when trying to actually reconstitute everything else that went into your cake. So this particular reason is just the reason for why we're using it today is basically just to allow us to get all that excess chocolate sauce right off those lamingtons. Remember, lamington is very, very simply a cake that's just been soaked in a little bit of some icing or some chocolate sauce, and you can actually alternatively finish that off with a bit of topping, whether coconut or chocolate. Now for the last and the final two pieces. Proceed to finish off that last and final piece. And once done, you can actually set your sauce aside and very simply proceed to add a bit of the vermicelli. But because we're actually going to finish this off right on the plate, proceed to grab a pair of tongs and proceed to place those one at a time. Of course, remembering always to give your presentation quite a bit of height, so just like that. So we're gonna reserve the few pieces there and just very simply grab your chocolate vermicelli and begin to sprinkle from the top, making sure to go right around the sides like that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is as easy as it is to make some very simple lamingtons. And as I said even in the beginning of the show, we're not going to actually insist on you sticking with the same exact recipe. Remember, we have actually given you a bit of a different touch to it. So basically, a very traditional lamington would have a bit of syrup with a bit of desiccated coconut on the side. We've alternatively decided to show you a different step today, which is basically doing them with all chocolate. So thank you so much once again for tuning in today, and I hope you've actually learned something you can use at home from this very show. Thank you so much for most of you as well who are tuned in on Facebook Live. Thank you once again for tuning in today. And until the next episode, where we continue to show you some very beautiful dishes from all around the world, and in particular the 5 beautiful continents around us. Thank you for tuning in. Have a lovely evening and see you soon.